All right, guys, this is the 15-month update. Sorry for the it's like maybe a week delayed. This is from Yongsan Station here. So the last 3 months, let's go over. Still started getting into a couple of books on the Refold server that were recommended, and I'll put those below. And I've had a shift in basically wanting to output. So I did about 3 or 4 italki lessons a few weeks back. That was my first time ever outputting, and it was, I mean, I actually surprised myself. It was slightly better than it was. I was still pretty bad still, and before I start shadowing and everything else, it's going to be pretty bad. But the teachers were like, yeah, okay, you know, because I said, I've never outputted, and they were like, okay, well, you're actually pretty good. So obviously that's not true, but anyway, so the other things that I added and kind of had a little bit of a paradigm shift, but I finally actually learned grammar formally, which is kind of weird to say, because I think maybe I was, in the prior communities, AJAT and so forth, it was about, don't study grammar, don't put any emphasis in it. I think for at least for me, and maybe it was a sweet spot to do it at about the year mark, not right in the beginning, is a lot of the things that I was hearing, I needed an explanation. I needed an English explanation of it. And I honestly saw a bump in immersion. The only thing I did was I watched the Chinese Zero to Hero, the free videos from HSK 1 through 4 to kind of solidify some concepts. And then I purchased the HSK 5 and 6 comprehensive course. And the only thing I'm doing from there is watching the grammar videos. And then also I'm adding any unknown words at all to Anki. And that's the other thing about SRS, because I think maybe I can recognize 5,000 or 6,000 words to really speak. And that's the other thing, like, to really speak, you don't need that many words, and just being able to recognize them, it's like I kind of want to put more emphasis into getting conversationally fluent, even with, let's say, a 3,000 word vocabulary, because the way you're really going to learn is listening a bunch and imitating. And then that's the other thing I was thinking about, is spending a lot of time looking at what tone the words are, but as a child does it. And as an anecdote, one of my buddies who learned Chinese and Japanese simply by just listening 24/7 and imitating, not learning any tones of individual words. And I think this is possible for an adult to do. I can definitely see it. And finally, I'm getting something out of my listening immersion, like podcasts and something like that. So really, the first year was just picking out the tones, and now I can actually follow along certain podcasts. So that's the other thing. Despite I really like reading, but I might have to de-emphasize that until I'm comfortable speaking, because I feel like you can always just learn vocabulary, Anki it, or read it when you already speak well. But if you're reading too much to begin with, it's hard. I've just anecdotally I've noticed people that did that, it was harder for them to start speaking comfortably and naturally. Whereas the people that basically learned through listening, like my buddy who just had the headphones and native material, and then go to a bar with a bunch of people and just start speaking right away, but really focus on the native listening. Those people seem to get to a conversationally fluent level faster. Whereas the people that read a lot, they're like, it's like a 2-3 year process to even speak reasonably. So, and maybe that's just, how people learn. Because I feel like, and that's the other thing, like just adding to your vocabulary, like reading, like honestly, like fiction books and reading whatever, like war stories or whatever, you're not really adding to your ability too much. And so that's kind of the shift that I had, is so just focusing on listening, even passively walking around at work, something like that, and reading here and there is good. And that's the other thing, like as far as like grammar, like I'm not convinced that reading teaches that to you. I mean, maybe that well. I think listening does, and it's a different type of grammar. Maybe I haven't found the right books, but like the grammar used in these Chinese books, even in the nonfiction ones or the translated ones, it's really a different type of grammar. It's not that high yield. honestly. Like, reading a bunch of stuff I think that's why when someone goes to the country or lives with a bunch of roommates in that language, they're killing it. They're absolutely destroying it and doing so good in the language. They're getting the most natural use of the grammar, and it's very hard to replicate that. For me, not living in the country, or not having a bunch of Chinese roommates, something like that, it's hard to replicate that. And outside of that, I think so. Coming up on the next 3 months in the 1.5 year mark, just gonna focus a little bit more on listening, and then I will start I purchased the Outliers pronunciation course. It's really short, and they have a lot of great points about shadowing and chorusing and something like that. And can't wait to dig into that. So I honestly think Chinese is very unique in that sense, because if you're studying a Romance language, for example, you could literally just talk, and then if you want to sound natural later, you can. But if you know the words, like you speak Spanish, Portuguese, you go to honestly, you have obviously the grammar framework is very similar, and you have no problem. But in Chinese, like, your pronunciation is a little off, like your tones. People are gonna be like, "What the hell?" So Chinese for sure requires, I think, dedicated tonality and pronunciation practice. I think for sure you can get away with not having it in other languages. Japanese, I would argue too, you would sound foreign, but people would certainly understand you, outside of a very few, little bit of pitch accent here and there. But by and large, people will understand you. But Chinese is not the case. So for me, when I try to spontaneously say stuff, it's very hard. I think if I do some conversational lessons, I can improve. I think it's going to be kind of slow. So I may do the shadowing and the dedicated conversation practice first. So the other thing is for Anki, like I've been adding, before I was just, as a beginner, I've been adding words that I think are relevant, that I see a lot. I adopted kind of the HSK lists. Not that I'm going to take it, I probably will, but so then I switched from traditional to simplified in Anki. It's hard to find certain simplified books. I'm sure there's a lot, but it seems like the books that people give me are traditional, and maybe because most people are doing a Taiwanese approach. So, but that's fine. As I said with the books, I'm really going to push it to a 3-to-1 ratio of listening to reading, and if that prevents me from acquiring vocabulary, so what? Doing Anki is you can always do that. It's like, it's effortless. You're not, you can do it while you're, in the middle of your day screwing around. You don't have to do it all at once. That acquiring vocabulary is not going to be that's something that can always be done. But I would argue reading and just acquiring vocabulary for the sake of it, honestly, it makes, I think just listening, the thing about it makes input more comprehensible. There's a big diminishing returns in that, because you learn the top 3,000 words, let's say, and yes, that makes input more comprehensible. But then, depending on what you're listening to, you have to relearn the 1,000 words in that domain. But if you're just learning words from the top 20,000 words in Chinese, you're not really. It's not a bang for the buck at all. Like, you're trying to listen to a podcast on business or real estate or wood, lumber or war, weaponry. That all you have to acquire all that vocabulary. But if you're just picking and choosing, I think studying a basic 5K list at most is fine. And then once you're fluent, and it's hard to ease off this Anki habit. But I would argue, like, year 1, it's good. Year 1 through 4, let's say you're studying part-time, not like full-time. But if you're just kind of doing other stuff, and it's like just adding those words to your word bank, it's not making you like conversationally fluent at all. Rare words. By rare, what I mean rare is like less than, let's say, 5,000 in a basic conversation. To be able to say directionality, car, subway, all that stuff is really important. But to get into the minutia, in my opinion, is it's not. I don't think it's useful. And I do see that a lot of people have kind of. You do need to burn the language in your brain with these Asian languages. You have to really rewire your brain. So you can't get away from getting a ton of massive input. You can't get away from it. But as far as learning words, and the reading thing is problematic, particularly in Chinese. If you're just reading French from day one Italian, yeah, I mean, you could acquire a ton of words, and then literally the grammar framework is already in your brain from knowing English Germanic language. So, like I said, so the plan for the next 3 months is decreasing the Anki. That's the other thing. There's an old HSK 1 through 6 deck, and then for the new HSK 6, they removed 2,000 words completely out of it and added 2,000 new words. I guess they thought the old HSK 6 words were outdated and they needed to. And that's the other thing, is just learning words for the those. A lot of those words they're in books. People don't say them very often in regular conversation. So I'm happy I haven't done really any output, because it's gonna be better to focus on pronunciation, which I think I'm gonna do that for the next year. Just getting a little input will definitely slowly maintain and increase vocabulary, but just have to set up a nice pronunciation thing, and then go from there. There's a lot of cool people in the Refold server community too, and it's super helpful. The offering suggestions and something like that. So. And yeah, good luck to everyone studying Chinese or whatever you're studying. Super fun, super cool journey. And and the other thing about studying in China or Taiwan, I was just wondering, like, can you get? I almost feel like you need that 6 months to a year of the colloquial, the really natural environment to get decent. And but people have done it without it. I just think it's gonna be a ton of input, and practice. But for sure, we're kind of turning the corner with this travel and everything, which is awesome. I think countries are opening up with less restrictions and something like that. So certain places, I don't know about in Asia, but September, October, Asia should be pretty good. And otherwise, hope everyone's having a great one, and best of luck. More to follow.